Right, so we should be live at this point. And I'll get started. Okay, so hello and welcome to our What's New webinar series. We've mentioned in previous sessions, should I say, this is designed to summarize and take you through the changes that have been made to Colleague as part of our latest release. So that was 24.12.02, and it's effectively our first release of 2025. If you'd like to ask any queries, please do so via the Q&A area that's available within Teams, and Precious will be there to monitor the questions as they come in. If you could try and keep the queries relevant to the session, i.e. based on the features that are being shown, that would be ideal. This session is also being recorded, and subscribers of the What's New series will be sent a copy of the session as a recording afterwards. So let's get started. That down. So effectively the agenda of a What's New session ultimately is to go into the release notes and work through those release notes top down. So if I just close down the release notes just to explain. So yeah, effectively from Colleague, anywhere in Colleague, there is the help file, which is the question mark icon on the top right hand side. To be fair, there is also a release notes notification as well, which gives you a link to the release notes, but we'll go to it through the help file. So if you click on the question mark icon, it will open up the help file. And effectively, we always have at the top part of the help file the current release, top left-hand side, and as well as the little summary video that we record about the release, and obviously a link there to the release notes as well. So if we click on that, that'll take us into our release notes, and we'll go through top down. The release that went out for the beginning of this month for 2025 was actually a sum of the development work delivered over the course of November and December in 2024. But if I go through the items, and then I'll jump into Colleague with each of these points and take you through the change. So the first thing to cover is the search results, or sorry, the option to now bulk update fields from a search result. So this is essentially an option that's been added to the search. If I just go about showing how it's enabled to begin with, just to explain that, if I go to admin and then go to user group permissions, and then you pick the user group relevant to your user. Within this area, under the search section, there is the option that's been added now, or the options that have been added now that you've got here: update candidate fields from search. And you can do it from the candidate, the company, the contact, and the requirement. And obviously there's a bit of description about what that is, but ultimately these need to be set to full access in order for this function to be visible on the right click menu or of the selected records menu when you're on the search. But if we now go over to the search, and I'll create a candidate search result. Just status and click on active. That gives me a search. So from a search result, effectively we've been updating the options of bulk updating from a search for a while. So one of the options that you've had added of late has been the ability to select a load of records, right click, and then you can assign ownership or remove ownership in bulk. There's also the option of assigning skills, adding skills to records and removing in bulk. But the new feature that was added was this option here of update fields. So if we click this option, essentially it will bring up our new feature, which allows you, I mean, from a candidate record, these are the fields that you can update. Obviously against the company, the contact requirement, it's a different set of fields. But ultimately, as it stands, these are the fields that you can update in bulk against a search result. So if you wanted to set the date available date for all of these candidates, then you could do that. If the fields are left blank, then they won't be updated. So effectively choose the necessary field and make the necessary changes you want. So if I was to say, select that to inactive as a candidate status, hit update records there, and then it runs the process, and it gives you a successful notification in terms of how many records were updated. If I just refresh that search result just to show, you can see now that all those candidate status have now been set to inactive. So that's against a candidate. If I go against a company as an example, and I'll just open up create a company search result. So if I was to go update fields here, we've got the option of updating the industry code in bulk or changing the mail shot status in bulk. If I was to do it against a contact, then again, you've got different options that are available. Just create a contact search result just to demonstrate. Again, you select a load of fields, select a load of records, right click, and then update fields. And then for contact, you've got contact type or mail shot status. Again, the ability to sort of bulk update those as you need to. And for a requirement, just some requirements. Again, bulk updating a requirement and wanting to change, say, the status code of the requirement or the source of that requirement is now an option that's available here as well. Now, if you want to update a field which hasn't been listed here, then please let us know. There's already been an extra one that's been added for the company, for company type. But yeah, effectively, we'll continue to add fields to this area or to this feature, effectively based on feedback and what clients want to bulk update. But essentially, it gives that functionality there as an option. The fields that are available are actually listed here, so you can see them all in this table. And that's essentially the update. So the next one along is the daily planner and the update to the UI that was made there. So if I go to the home page, daily planner is available off the home page. You see view daily planner that's available there. And effectively the purpose of the daily planner is to give you a summarized view of your calendar and task items that basically mean that you can see what you've got on today or perhaps what you've got on this week, this month. Also, it does, if you've got rights to do so, you can view other people's calendar and tasks, again, based on your 365 permissions and what you have access to view. But the UI to this, the change really has been ultimately at the top here. We ultimately wanted to recreate what we achieved with the user overview on the daily planner, so it's very clean in terms of the time frame that you're searching over. If you switch it to this week, again, the dates make it quite clear in terms of what's been searched over. Obviously, the ability to create your own bespoke date range is now there as well, and effectively the functionality that you had before as well with regards to picking dates is there as well. You also have the option as well now to filter out calendar invites or task invites. So if you wanted to filter out task items, you could do that. If you wanted to filter out calendar items, you could do that. And again, that just helps a cleaner view of seeing the information that you want to see. As before, if you wanted to click on any of these task items to take you from the associated records, same thing could be done for calendar events. Then obviously you can put links there, and if you want to complete any items, you can just tick there, hit complete, and obviously that can complete off tasks as you'd expect. There's a refresh button as well for triggering a refresh to get the latest if you've got some changes there. An option to a help section. So that's the UI for the daily planner that's been updated, and we'll leave that be for the time being now, based on obviously user feedback. So the next thing along is around performance, and ultimately it's what we had noted from going into records. From the calls that are made as part of opening a record. And from the calls that are made as part of the login process as well, there was some repetition in the calls. And what that basically just means is that when you're loading a record, there was some things that were happening multiple times in the background that really only needed to happen once, and then you sort of could work with that data. So what we've done is gone through and made sure that it's as data streamlined as it can be. There's still some other work that we can do around that, but ultimately that's shaved off some seconds from the loads. Particularly the requirement was the one that had quite a lot of repetition, and it meant the loading of a requirement could take a little bit longer than we were comfortable with, but that's now got down to a few seconds, so that's in a better state really ultimately, and we'll just keep going with regards to performance, obviously loading records as quickly as they can be into the screen. The Outlook add-in in terms of its enhancements. The Outlook add-in was actually deployed during the course of December, so some of these enhancements have been visible to the users. But yeah, effectively just to explain what changes that we made. Ultimately, the Outlook add-in available obviously when you're in Outlook. There's this option that you can have where you've got the colleague icon there. You can click on that. It will search the email address of the record that you've highlighted, bring you back any records that it finds. You can pin this on the right hand side, and it'll give you some record information like a summary view, where it gives you obviously the details of the record, links through to the record as well, the ability to create a history, the ability to parse and also attach the document to the record and see their skills. Also, if there's multiple records against the candidate, you can obviously jump through those records and see the various different records associated to, again, the email address that's associated to the email that you selected there. But some updates have been made. The key update I would say is the email template. That's a pretty massive update. So when you're when you're creating an email, if you click on the colleague add-in, there's an option here now that does say use template. So you can attach a file, obviously, to an email that's obviously a file associated to a record in Colleague, or you can attach a CV that's associated to a candidate that's been longlisted to a requirement, or you can attach a spec CV, which is similar to attaching a file, but ultimately it's recording the attachment as a spec CV. So it's recording it properly from the stats perspective that you sent a spec CV, as opposed to just attaching a file. But use template is a new one. That effectively means that you can select the entity type that you're essentially emailing. Ultimately, if you're looking to send out an interview template, you'd be selecting interview. If you were looking to send out a candidate email, you'd be selecting candidate. And ultimately, this template drop down will update to be relevant to whatever type you select. It will obviously show you the templates that are associated to that type of record. And then you can search colleague. I'll search that one, and you can search it by the ID of a record, or you can put someone's name or their job title or so on, do a quick search effectively. But then when you select that record, it will load the template into the email body, and the merge field would have converted as part of it loading that information. So obviously that's a useful option now that's been made available within Outlook, as opposed to needing to use templates only within the colleague interface against the email form. So that was a big update that was made, and that's obviously available now if you've got the add-in. I should say, if you haven't got the add-in installed, in terms of where you would find that, just go to the help file. Within integrations, you have the Outlook add-in, and then here you see click here for more details. It's in here that you've got the setup instructions for how to actually download and install the add-in. So you can click on the add-in there. Obviously the information's here to be read, and that obviously gives you the detail that you need. That helps you install the add-in if you want to. But yeah, effectively the option of looking up and logging an email, looking up a record and logging an email has also been added as well. So if you're selecting an email that's not registered on the system, it gives you that option here to look up and associate the email to that to a different record maybe that's appropriate, that you should be registering the email against. Also, if you're hitting register contacts or register candidates, it will now pull through in the name and the email address from the email into the form as part of it creating. So there's a few helpful updates that have been made there, and just some general UI tidy ups that have also been done. The next point along is through the reports, and that's the consultant activity report. And we obviously continue to receive feedback with regards to our reports. Obviously, it's with a view to us continuing to update these based on how they need to be used and the stats and the data that need to be received. But yeah, effectively the consultant activity report is if you like, it's the go-to report for seeing stats for events that are activity that's happening in the system over a duration of time. As part of this release, we've updated the report to work off the back of subcategories. So what I mean by that is that you have kind of standard categories, such as interviews, new records that have been made, placements that have been made, and so on. But ultimately, you'll want there to be a bit more kind of subcategory breakdown to that stat. So you might want to see the interviews, but you might want to know what interviews against permanents, what interviews against contracts, for example. So for that, you've got this option of show subcategories, and you can click on that, hit update, and then the report will break down the stats so that you see it not just from a general kind of interview perspective, but in terms of numbers, but also just broken down against contract and perm breakdowns. You also have things like resource by and place by breakdowns as well, rather than just how many extensions or how many placements, what placements against specific users as well. You have that breakdown, which obviously helps just get a bit more specific in terms of the information that you need to see. And yeah, from there obviously you can then click on the numbers at any time and drill down into the data as you'd expect, obviously available within the report, and obviously it's there as well within the summary table. It's also there in terms of the the pie chart as well if you want that breakdown. This is a demo system. This user is obviously the only active user, so it doesn't give you that breakdown, but you get the idea. It's that's how you see that information. But you also have this option of including 0 users. So if you wanted to also bring through other users that are not doing activity, at the moment the mindset is that you only want to see the activity that's actually happened, as opposed to have it highlighted to you the users that have had no activity. And if that's the case, you can obviously click on that. It will bring through all the users that aren't doing any activity. Obviously, save as default was there as before. That's just saved there, and the date range periods as well have also been improved. So before it was just today, this week, this month, and then a date range. Now you've got last year, last quarter, last week. Just a few more period options, which just to help track back and see the information that you need to see. The next one along is the website plugin, which I do not have updated against my demo environment, I'm sorry to say. So we'll be recording a separate video about this, but fundamentally we have a website plugin that can be set up to bring back placements, or sorry, I say requirements that have been posted to public. Effectively on a requirement record, you have the option to post to public or unpost to public if it's already been posted, and that means that it's then visibly available from the public facing API key to show on as an online job search. So yeah, once I've got this set up properly, I'll then record a full video about this, but there's ultimately a standardized website plugin that is available for any client to use if they want to put that into their website, and that will allow them to have searches across requirements, and also handle applications now. So the updates that have been made as part of the November and December sprint was the ability to support custom fields. So within the if we go to a custom field, just to highlight what I mean by that, essentially what you have as standard when you're searching over the website plugin is the job title and the job type, but what you can now have it is effectively any of the custom fields can also be made visible to the API, which basically just means they'd then be searchable as an option. So if you wanted to make any other fields or any custom fields searchable on the API, it's possible to do that. So when you're when this plugin is in place and all set up there, the extra search options that you'd have would be listed in here for you to then use, and obviously that enables a different or more granular level search. The other key thing that's happened there is the application form. So when someone clicks on to apply for a vacancy, there's now a built-in form that allows them to key in their information and attach a CV and submit, and that will come through then into an email address as set up as a global setting on the system itself. So that allows you to obviously take those external applications from your website. Another API related thing, which again can't really be demonstrated, is the API flag to bypass optional mandatory settings. So when I say that, is this was mainly done to accommodate our integration with Sourcewell. Sourcewell ultimately will enable you to create contacts very quickly from external sites and candidates as well. But ultimately, if you've set up mandatory fields, it might be that you don't have certain mandatory fields as part of using their tool as part of doing that, and obviously it allows you to then bypass that process and obviously finish off the candidate once it's been created in the system. But yeah, effectively it was done for Sourcewell, but it does give an extra option now where effectively, if someone's using the third party the API to create a record into the system, if you want that record to come in without having to adhere to all the mandatory restrictions that have been put in place, if you're doing it within the colleague UI, you'd have the option to bypass. I say optional, it says optional mandatory field because certain fields are mandatory no matter what. So a name is always mandatory. When you're creating a contact, a company is always mandatory. There are some fields which are just non-negotiable, but yeah, the rest are optional mandatory fields which obviously can be bypassed. The next one along is to do with the naming convention of requirement types. So what I mean by that is, effectively, Colleague obviously supports there being 4 main types of requirement. So contract, where you have a start date and end date, and obviously the candidate has been paid in rates, either hourly, daily, whatever agreed rate format that you have. Fixed term contract is where you've got, again, a start date and end date with regards to the contract, but they're paid in salary. Permanent is obviously they're paid in salary, there's a start date, and then that's it. And then a rolling contract is there's a start date, they're paid in rates, there's no end date, it's just a contract that's kind of ongoing. And those are the kind of 4 main categories. But what we've had before now is clients effectively say that they don't quite agree with the naming terminology that we've used, the naming convention of these items. They want us to change them to be something else. In interim is a classic example, or someone wanted to change contract for temp in terms of their terminology. So what we've done is we've updated the requirement terms lookup to be modifiable. You can't add extra terms and you can't delete requirement terms. That you've got the 4, and the purpose behind each of those is as I've said. But if you wanted to change the name of them, so for example, if you wanted to change this to temp, then you could do so now, and it effectively just does that. It changes the name to be whatever you would have specified. So the type would then change to be that, and ultimately the records that might be associated to that previous code would just be then set and appear against that type now. So it's just an ability to be able to set the naming convention of requirement terms if you don't agree with the standard terms that are there as standard. But I'm going to set that back to our standard rolling contract. Okay, next one along is the plus sign. We're into sort of minor UI areas. So these are just tweaks that have been made to the interface to make it hopefully a little bit easier for users. One is the plus sign that's been added to when you're dealing with a rejected offer. So what I mean by that, so if I go to recent items, if I go to a requirement, what we've got on the candidates table of a requirement, it's essentially if we've had the plus sign that was added to the interview column a little while ago, and that basically just means that when you've obviously done the first interview, you can then progress to the second interview quite quickly by hitting plus, and then just moves on to the next interview along. If you had created an offer for a candidate, the offer used to be there in terms of the offer date, and then if you rejected that offer, you couldn't then see that offer date. It would take you back to a red triangle, a red arrow, whereas now it will give you the date that it's been offered. It's just obviously been rejected. So yeah, effectively what you've got now is a plus sign there for creating the offer again. So that just means that you can, if someone has rejected the offer, if you create the offer, the plus sign won't be there. If they've rejected the offer, the plus sign would be there to allow you to see the previously rejected offer, and then obviously hit the plus sign to go to the offer form and then start again in terms of creating another offer that hopefully would then be accepted. So that's the plus sign being added there, just for creating another offer, just to kind of make that a little bit easier and one click available to users. Aptos being added as the font to the CK editor. Fairly self-explanatory. If you go to the email form, effectively you've now got Aptos available here if you want to use that. So basically the Aptos font is basically just as part. This is just available within there. Obviously that just updates as you need to. Next one along is the panels. So we have, obviously, as per norm, really, if clients want to have certain panels added to the system that aren't there, and it's kind of a standard setup, then we'll just deliver those panels. And what we had before was a setup where you could have kind of current contracts was shown, but what wasn't shown was the contract placements that have been made over a particular period. Likewise, same for perm placements. It'll be perm placements by the user, but now you can obviously switch it up to be, just switch it to last quarter, just so it gives me some stats. So this will be the perm placements that were created over that period of time. You can click on that. It gives you those records, and you can obviously click through into the candidate, to the placement, to the company. Likewise, the contract will do the same as well. Just give you the placements that have been made. If I do last month, no, I'll do last week. Okay, I'll do today. There we go. Contract placements. Click on that. Gives me the contract, and I can click through into there. That was basically what was done there. Just the addition of those, and that's both user overview and team overview dials that have been added there, perm placements made by the user. Next one along is the markers lever. This was just kind of UI tidy up because it was just getting a bit long. If I go into a contact record, for example, markers lever functionality is there for this contact effectively leaving and going to work for a different company, rather than having to recreate that contact to that new company they've gone to, allowing you to mark this contact as a leaver and create that contact against that other company in a single workflow. If you go to off the view more menu or off the right click menu, you'll see markers lever that's available there. Let's say they're moving to another company, hit yes there. But essentially the update that was made was just the ability for these to be in two columns. This used to be listed in one long column, and it just meant the form went keep going on. And we obviously keep adding to it as people ask for different things to be copied over. So yeah, the option is there, obviously, the option is there to use this for the markers lever functionality. But the update that was made was essentially just the two columns, switching into that just to make it a little bit cleaner on the eye. Selection screens, having the select all and page all options. Not particularly exciting this one, but yeah, effectively, if you did a selection screen search for any of the selection screens, what you have now is this option that's been added. So if you wanted to switch back to there, if you wanted to select only the records on this page, you could tick there. That just selects the 10 that are obviously here, and then takes me through into it. If I wanted to only do, for example, if I wanted to do all, I could tick there, that would select all of them. So that's a kind of an all option that's available as well. But that's essentially the crux of it, just selecting all, selecting just the page that you're on, those select options. And obviously there's export options on the placement, there's email options that are available, and obviously just having those select all functions available. Same on leads as well. It just makes it a little bit easier for users. The next one along is campaigns. That's the ability to export campaign stats. So if you go to the campaigns area, Actually, I've got to enable this, so I'll go to admin first. Go to use group permissions. I'll do view all. Just look that up. It's campaigns, isn't it? So export campaigns table. If I set that to full access, that obviously then turns that on. I'll go back to the campaigns area. You can see there you've got the export option that's been added now. So effectively, what obviously campaigns is there to give you stats based on when you're sending out an email, bulk email. If you want to set up a campaign against it, it will then give you a feel for how many people were sent, that received the email, that read it, that replied, all using Outlook standard functionality. But effectively, what you didn't have was the means to export this information into a spreadsheet, which you can now do. So if you've got nothing selected and you hit export, it will just export out all of your campaigns and the stats associated to them within a table. If you have selected a campaign and you hit export, it will then actually list out obviously the records and show who's what and where. So there's just extra options that have been added there just for the sort of helpful people that are using campaigns in the system. Next one along is the refresh button, just for job boards. So again, if you're on a requirements and you go to the job boards tab, you've got a refresh button there. Ultimately, if you post up a requirement to Broadbean, obviously the job boards tab, if I refresh this requirement, the job boards tab loads when you click on the job boards tab for the first time when you're going into a requirement. So you click on that, it will sync up and it will get the latest stats. But what we didn't have was a means to kind of trigger that to happen again. So obviously, rather than refreshing the requirement, you can now just click that, it will refresh the job board, and obviously it will just bring back and take through the new sync of information that's there. Next one along is the ability to update the completed date of retainers. So if we go to a requirement that's got retainers enabled, so retainers obviously there is functionality to, if you're invoicing based on milestones throughout the requirement process, and you want to invoice, so taking on search, opening retainer. So you're billing just on the fact that you've got a retainer. And then we'll just do a unit of 1 there. We'll hit save. That obviously gives us just an initial retainer. If I then wanted to go and create another retainer based on, I don't know, after sending 3 CVs, or that's probably a bit like 10 CVs, 10 CVs sent, we then invoice another figure, units 10. And obviously you can create these different milestones against requirements and have it so that they track the stats based on what's going on the candidates tab. It'll automatically update the count based on what's happened. But what you can do is obviously mark items as complete, or they can be auto-completed. So if you have it so that when the count reaches the number of units it needs to reach, it can auto-complete, which then can green light that it should be invoiced. Alternatively, you can mark it as complete manually. But what it used to do is mark that as complete manually, and then the completed date would be there, and that would be just today's date, and you wouldn't be able to edit that. Whereas now you can backdate the completion if you want to. It just allows for that little bit of audit autonomy. So if you need to be able to do your admin and obviously say, well, I actually completed that back then obviously you've got the means to do that now. That's against retainers. The other option that's done, which is of a similar sort of ilk, is with regards to the offer accepted date and the offer rejected date. So when you are, if I just create another, actually no, I'll go to another offer here. So if we go to this is a pending offer that's currently there at the moment. What we can do is now when you hit reject offer, the thing that's been added is date rejected. So this will be just set as today's date. But again, if you've got a scenario where you know that offer was actually rejected last week and you're just catching up on admin, you can now backdate as you need to, and obviously run through a rejection as you'd expect. With regards to the offer accepted date, on the placement record, there's now an offer accepted date there as well. So if I go to, see if I can find any placement. So what you can see on the offer is that the offer accepted date is there as well. And again, if you needed to change that offer accepted date, if the placement is unauthorized, that would be a modifiable date. So if there's a need for, again, just for admin purposes, to amend the offer accepted date, you have the means to do that now on the placement record as well. And the last component is the user setting, the Control Enter option. So for those that aren't aware, when you are start a new email, when you are sending an email, so I just put example email, and you are type in your email as you would, example email content. If you hold down Control Enter, it will just send the email. It's in the same ilk as within Outlook. If you hit down Control Enter, it will obviously just fire away and send off the email. However, it's been raised that certain users are unhappy with that, and that makes sense. So off the user settings section, there is now an option around that control option here. So if you go to user settings and then put in control up here, or CTRL, more to the point, you've got this option here of enable pressing Control Enter to send there, and that'll be marked as yes, and that's defaulted as yes for so that obviously from a impact perspective from the release it didn't affect any users. But if you wanted to turn off that option so that you didn't hit Control Enter by mistake and send that email by mistake, you could set that to no, and obviously that wouldn't work in that way. We also updated the tab index as well, so that if for a reason, if you tabbed off, you don't tab onto the send button or the discard button. The next, you tab into if anything, you tab into the form. But there was a problem with it, tabbing there and then landing on the send or discard buttons there. So yeah, that option has been resolved as well. That scenario has been resolved as well. So there's the updates. There's obviously bug fixes, as is standard with any software. As we work through the system and enhance it, we then have to refine the system further with anything we might have affected as part of that process. So we will fix obviously bugs categorized as part of any release, and obviously include all of those available or be part of an update. So we continue to obviously work through bug fixes as they're raised through support. But that's the What's New session completed. I'll just check now to see if there's any questions from anybody. There are not any questions. Okay, fine. Okay, well, thank you very much for your time, and see you again next time. Take care. Bye-bye.